Okay. All right. All right. Hi, everybody. I'm here tonight with Patti, of course, who we're doing our Coast to Coast Reiki chats together. She is calling in from New York. And tonight we have an awesome guest, a friend of ours, who's Charlotte Chanler, who's calling in from about a mile down the road from me here in LA. I suppose I didn't really cross my mind that we could have just gotten together to do this.
I know, next time we should.
Yeah, right. Oh, so it goes with technology. Hey, it works out. We're all going to be in bed after this.
Yeah.
So Patti and I have Charlotte with us tonight because we've actually talked for quite a while about having Charlotte join, because we met her together. The three of us, I guess, all met each other for the first time in Florida when we were there for our training. For the animal Reiki training with the Let Animals Lead method that Kathleen Prasad teaches. And so Charlotte and I, it's kind of a really funny story because we walked into this hotel in Apopka, north of Orlando is Apopka. So we walk into this hotel in Apopka, and Charlotte and I are sitting next to each other, and they say, oh, you guys are both from LA. And so we walked out during the first break and both asked each other, oh, where are you from? Assuming that the other one would say, oh, like the west side of LA. And then we keep talking, and it turns out we live within a mile of each other. And we were like, this is crazy that we both traveled all the way to Florida to meet each other. And we traveling all the way back to LA. So we've been friends now for, I guess, about a year. And then we also met Patti at that same thing, which a lot of you already know the story of Patti and I, because we've talked about that multiple times, but how we met at that animal Reiki training as well. And so, go ahead.
Is that Kathleen, our teacher, had teamed Charlotte and I up to practice doing a Reiki blessing. Mm-hmm. And it turned out Charlotte used to live like a couple miles away from me.
Yes, I know. It was so funny that both of you I have such ties to. Yes.
So funny.
And that we could exist in those spaces and not have met each other another way than being in this perfect place in Florida at that rate.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. I completely forgot about that.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So we've been wanting to have Charlotte on, since when we had an idea for this and hadn't even started it. But Charlotte does a lot of work with horses. And so we thought it would be really cool to bring her into a conversation to just learn more about horses, doing Reiki with horses, doing Reiki with humans, and like any other cool stuff that Charlotte does. So we're going to try to keep this to a pretty manageable time frame so that we don't time out. So hopefully these are interesting questions for all of you too. So I'm going to go ahead and kick us off and get started. And Charlotte, I wanted to ask you first, you seem to have a really deep connection with horses. And I know some of your history, but have horses been in your life since you were, a young child? Or when did horses come into your life? And, how has that relationship with them kind of transformed over the years to where you are now?
Mm-hmm. I love that question. It's funny you ask it because I was just home visiting my mom, and we stopped into our storage unit where I have a bunch of stuff from childhood, and I haven't seen it in years, and we just thought it would be fun to check out some old stuff. And she had saved so much artwork from when I was a child, and starting so early, you guys, like, it is a prolific amount of horse art. Like, we were like crying, laughing at just how much every single one, and starting from so early. So that felt really affirming because I've always known that I've had a deep connection with horses, but sometimes we forget those really early childhood desires, and it feels really beautiful to be so connected now to my child self through that, having that passion come through. And I really occurred, and it was clearly sort of in there already.
That's awesome. Oh my gosh, that's so cool. And so then I know that you rode when you were like high school age. Is that when you started?
Yeah, well, I actually was really lucky, and my mom totally has always been really supportive of me. So I started riding when I was 4. And
oh, wow.
I didn't stop taking lessons. Like, it was 4 years old. That's all I wanted to do pretty much until I went to college. That was every day after school, every day of the summer, every day of a break, always the barn.
Wow. Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's so great. So to give us an idea of like how you're involved with them now.
Well, it's been really beautiful to be involved with horses through Reiki in a really different way because, starting when I was 4, the options nearby where we lived were all very traditional connections with horses, going to a lesson barn, taking lessons, eventually starting to go to horse shows and competing. And I became, really involved in competitive horse show circuit. And after I took some time away from showing, I really was able to see what was important about my connection with horses and what wasn't. And it was really the competitive part that fell away and didn't really seem to make sense to me anymore. And I also then wasn't sure how to reconnect. There's not that many people that will say, yeah, come hang out with my horse. It's, now I get to have that because of Reiki. But before that, I was sort of like dying to get back to horses, not really sure how to do that without having a horse of your own. And that's not easy when you're living in Brooklyn, where I was at the time. And so Reiki really made so much sense because I could be with horses, not be asking anything of them. I know I'm having this really beautiful, ethical conversation with them, and it's beautiful for both of us.
That's awesome.
I think that's like one of the questions we had too, because, from going to the rescues and the sanctuaries and to share Reiki with them, and then also at some riding facilities and things like that, it's so different. The two environments are so different that the horses are in. And I would love to hear like your opinion on that. Do they like to be ridden? Do they like to go on trail riding? Do they like to have a job? Or do they like to just hang out?
Yeah. Those are awesome questions, and those are questions I've been mulling over a lot lately. I'm involved in a group with a friend of mine, a book club that she runs, and she has a podcast too that's called Mind, Heart, Horse. And we read books that are all about ethical treatment of horses, ethical training of horses, and all really science-based behavioral methods. And a lot of traditional riding and traditional methods are not based in any science, or in fact, the science that they are based on is, oh my gosh, Brandy, your dog in his jacket in the back. I just have to stop for a moment.
I keep seeing the two of them going in and out in the back.
So cute. So a lot of these traditional methods, when we're looking at the reactions we get from horses, the history that we believe we have from observing horses, we've really only scratched the surface and been looking pretty much only at domesticated horses. It's not until really recently that we've been focusing on what horses in the wild will do and how we can really help the domesticated environment match a more natural environment for horses. Anything from even just the way that we usually feed them is very counterintuitive to the way their body naturally works. They're meant to be grazing 24/7. Their physiology tells them that there's a certain amount of chewing that they need to do a day. And then when we feed them, breakfast, lunch, and dinner in these very rich, concentrated grains, they're getting the same amount of calories and the same amount of nutrients, but then they haven't chewed enough, and then they develop these habits like weaving and cribbing and destructive habits in their stalls and anxiety. So it is interesting seeing these different environments and and differences between like rescues and going to facilities where horses are working more regularly. Like I go pretty usually to a barn where the horses do a lot of therapeutic work, and both sets of horses I've found are really responsive to Reiki. But I am so thankful for the way that we practice Let Animals Lead, because you might expect that these therapy horses that are, so used to having people around them all of the time might want to just like cuddle into your lap. And it's actually those horses that I find really prefer hands off, because they have a job to do. They have so much of their day that's like, okay, you're putting this on me, you're making all these decisions, I'm going to, act in a way that works for humans. And it can be really special to have that time, and so important to those horses to have time where they are around a person that isn't asking anything of them.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned the Reiki that you're doing and the Let Animals Lead method. I'm wondering if you can dive into that a little bit more, because because of the way that the type of Reiki that we do is hands off and very meditative focused, and, very much giving the animal kind of the freedom to do what they want to with the session. I can picture the way a session goes, because it's similar for all animals, but I've never actually seen a session with a horse, so I'm curious if you could talk about that a little bit and some of the experiences you've had.
Yeah, absolutely. As both of you know, every session's so unique, but with the horses, this is a great example is I went a few months ago to this wonderful place in Malibu called Skydog Sanctuary, and they work rescuing wild horses who are otherwise being rounded up or going to these holding facilities. And they rescue them, and they also try very hard to reunite family bands, which is super beautiful. And they have a place in Malibu and a huge place in Oregon where the horses run on tons of acres. And the facility in Malibu is for horses that need more help, maybe more medical care. And so getting to go there and stand out in the middle of this field with a bunch of wild horses was just sort of a dream come true for real. And what that looked like was me standing somewhere that I thought was, central to the field. When I started out not close to any of the horses, I generally greeted them when I walked into the area, and then I just found a place where I could stand. And I did have my eyes open because you're in a field with a bunch of wild horses.
I was wondering about that.
And, I do go through periods where I'll close my eyes and relax, and I really went into that meditative state. And huge for me that I've found in my practice is dropping any expectation of what it should look like. And that can be hard, especially when you're there and there's other people watching you who work with the horses and don't know what you are doing. And and it can look kind of funny. You're just standing there in the middle of, but then you have these amazing moments after a few minutes where I found myself opening my eyes, and there was this incredible chestnut Mustang, Chesney, standing in front of me, just like breathing right into my solar plexus. And he stayed with me for so long. And, and we just like had this incredible moment. And after he came up, then he moved on, and other members of the herd came up and sort of had these moments with me where we shared a moment, and then they would leave, and then it was the next horse would come. And then, wow. And that was really special. And that's a dream of what a Reiki session can look like. And that felt really amazing to me. But sometimes it looks like, there's one of those horses at the therapy barn who I adore, Jeannie, and I never have been in her stall for a Reiki session. She really wants you outside of her stall. She doesn't want to be touched. She doesn't even want you that close. But if you give her 10 feet and just hold the space for her, her lip will drop. She shows that she's calming. And then we're really in the space. So those are two really interesting examples of like how
Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome. Sorry, you froze for a second. You're back. Good.
Okay, good.
Yeah, that's.
No, don't freeze now.
I know.
Yeah. I found
yeah.
that so interesting too with the horses because I've never owned a horse.
Mhm.
You know, occasionally growing up, you go on a horseback ride, you know, on a trail ride or something. But I feel such a connection to the horses, and I wanted to ask your opinion on this too, because we took the same animal communication class together too, and we practiced communicating with all different kinds of animals. And I just found I had the deepest connection still with horses. Most out of those sessions with the horses, you know. Yeah, I just think they're so intuitive and so spiritual, and it's so easy just to drop into that space and connect.
Absolutely. It's funny, I always make this connection with them, and someday I'll find some scientific article that links this, but there's something about horses and whales that I find really similar in this, I don't know, spiritual way in which they sort of carry this ancient wisdom that's mysterious and alluring, and they're so forgiving and available. Horses are so forgiving of us. So, yeah, I find, and you know what was interesting, and I wonder if you found this in our animal communication class, that since we have this background in Reiki, and, you know, we're used to coming to animals with this all is well outlook and seeing the perfection in them, that I actually struggled coming down from, I kept getting all these messages no matter what, even if I knew an animal maybe did have some pain they were experiencing. I kept just receiving, you know, all these beautiful messages of peace and so much more Reiki. And our teacher was like, I think you need to come down a little bit. Like, you're almost connecting to this higher self of the animal than their present self.
Well, it was very different. I was telling Brandy about the class, and I just said, you know, it was a little confusing at times, because with Reiki, you always see the animal in its purest light, right? In its original self, and you're creating a space of healing. So you're not asking the animal anything. You just want to create a beautiful space where healing can take place. Yeah. And yet with animal communication, it's like an active mental conversation, asking them questions, which is so different.
Yes.
I said it's like if you want to go for a massage and the masseuse talks to you the whole time.
That's so
and you don't feel like you got to relax, or what just happened? Did I have a massage, right?
Totally.
The two definitely have to be kept separate. Either do an animal communication session or a Reiki session. I don't think the two can really be mixed well because of the two different practices, you know?
Yes, I don't think I would be able to feel confident toggling between those two spaces.
Let's stop talking now. Yeah. So we could just relax. Yeah. So how did it feel though to be in like that holding space, knowing that they were moved from where they were, right?
Yes.
Their land, and now they're in captivity, basically awaiting what, you know, like how does that feel?
You know, I think that in that space, I definitely didn't feel any sadness about that. Of course, it would be amazing if they could still be living on this land, but I was so happy to see them somewhere where they still got to live in a herd. They're not living in a stall alone, never going out with another horse. They get to be with other Mustangs. They're going to be safe in that place, taken care of for the rest of their lives. They're never going to end up at an adoption or something like that. Or what's the word I'm looking for? An
like
auction.
A sale. Yeah.
Yes.
An auction.
So
that's what I was wondering, if that's where they end up when they're held, you know?
Yeah, it can happen a lot, really surprisingly easily. I heard recently a piece of information that was the average horse goes through 8 homes in his lifetime.
Wow.
And so it's really not uncommon to go to an auction or even to a kill pen and see horses that probably used to be show jumpers or dressage horses. And really highly valued, highly trained horses. Not that ones that aren't are less valuable, but it's interesting the way that that works out.
Wow. It's interesting because I think, like, given sometimes the current state of the world and things happening with animals, I think a lot of times people get really discouraged, when you think about that kind of like, gosh, they move around like 8 times in their life, and you picture what they go through, at least, the way that we picture our human emotions of what it would be like for us going through that, and I know sometimes it feels like so overwhelming, but then it's also, things are getting better, like I know you mentioned that the research is coming out more and more people are reading it and understanding it. And what do you think, like, to someone who could be listening and thinking, what could we do? Like, what can we do? Like, what can we do to help the situation? Do you have thoughts on that or an opinion on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of things to do whether you have a horse or you don't. Starting from, if you have a horse, and let's say we don't all have access to this idyllic pasture boarding situation where your horse can live in a herd. And yeah, that is the best. But, in small ways, if you know that your horse can't do that, we should be looking to enriching their day-to-day and making it as ideal as possible. I also think that, down the road, I hope that less people feel intimidated to have horses. I think that a lot of people don't ever consider it for themselves and think about horses as, a part of the world that's reserved for people who have a ton of money, which is not true. They're actually pretty affordable depending on what your plan is. And, there's so many horses that need homes, so many horses that need to be adopted. And there's also so many horses that don't ever need to be ridden. And that doesn't have to be a part of your relationship. And you can have a really beautiful relationship without that being a part of it. So I think it can be way more approachable. And I also think that, just making sure that you're open to new information that's coming out, not getting stuck listening to people who have, similar to like when we're searching for people to teach us Reiki, we're not looking for someone with like a guru mentality. We want people that are helping you figure out the right thing for you and your horse. And nothing is going to fit everybody. But, working towards humane treatment that brings in the consent of the horse as much as possible is amazing. Like, I went to a horse expo recently in California, and it was a lot of people doing traditional methods that were kind of cringeworthy to watch, honestly. But then I was so happy to see this person who I adore. Her name's Mustang Maddie on all her social medias, and she is famous for doing positive reinforcement, which is like, you can do it with dogs, clicker training. It originated actually with marine mammals and dolphins. And it's fabulous for horses. And Mustang Maddie was there, and I was so overjoyed at how many people were there watching and maybe went home and wanted to try something different with their horse and think about, what does their horse actually want to do? And Maddie even showed everybody, this is a simple way you can train your horse to tell you if he wants you to get off of him or if they even want to ride. And you can train your horse with positive reinforcement to, come up to the mounting block as a sign that he wants you to get on. And, if he wants to leave, just like in Reiki, that's okay too. And we'll do something else that's not riding, but really incorporating more consent into our work with them.
Wow. I love that so much, because I was telling you guys, like, we were, last week we were in Costa Rica traveling, and, we went to a place where, like, it starts off with our hotel, I guess, like really vetted every tour operator. And then we went and we saw, and we're riding, a horse, but it's like the whole time in my mind, I'm thinking, do you want to be carrying me? Or, is this fun for you? Is this not fun for you? Like, what do you, and, it's like amazing to think of like a future world where they could tell us,
Yes.
Yeah, I'm totally up for this right now. Or like, yeah, I just need a break. You know, it's amazing. Uh-oh, she froze again.
Like,
there we go. Good,
am I
you're
back?
back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is the future. I hope that people are interested in that. I mean, I think it's so amazing if we can bring that communication to the forefront. And, you know, horses do have a harder time than some of our other more regular animals in our life. Like cats and dogs can vocalize when they're in pain. And I think that horses suffer a lot because they can't, and we often don't know what the signals are. And a lot of horses would be happy otherwise, but have tack that fits them badly, and that can be the worst part. You know, there's just so many intricacies with them, and being able to work and train in a way that creates an environment where your horse can say yes and no is just phenomenal to me and exciting to me. And, you know, think about all the things your horse how amazing it would feel if your horse said, yes, I want you to get on. Like, you know, that's like the dream every child has.
Right. It's so true. It's so true. Well, we are about out of time. So I want to make sure we get some time in here, Charlotte, for you to share how people can get in touch with you and where they can learn more, you know, or connect with you.
Yes. So you can learn more from my website, Charlotte Chanler, CharlotteChanler.com. And I also am Charlotte Chanler on Instagram. And I do send out, not super regular, but I do send out emails. So if you sign up, then you'll have some updates and some fun things. And I make videos, and I'm hoping to have more content in that regard soon. And I'd love to see you in my studio in Glendale. And I also do Reiki sessions with people and their animals. I love coming to a barn and working with people and their horses. That's really the most special for me.
Love that.
Thanks so much for having me on, you guys.
Oh, you're so welcome. Do you have any classes coming up or anything?
I don't have a class in the works at the moment, but I'm planning to hopefully have one in the new year. So get on that mailing list and you'll know.
And I'd love to have you back on again to talk about meditation another time, because Charlotte has a meditation that you can download from your website, right?
Yes, totally. It's on my website.
Yeah. So we'll have her back on another time and we'll chat about that. So
sweet. I would love to be back.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. It was so good seeing you.
It's so nice to all be here. It's so sweet in our little Brady Bunch boxes.
I know. Right?
Yeah, it's so nice.
I was like, my eyes are going to be going up and down the whole time. It's awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much, Charlotte, for coming on. Thank you,
That was
Patti.
such a fun conversation.
Yes,
Yeah,
I agree.
Learning more about horses from you.
Yes, I can't wait to hear more about your horse adventures. I'm glad they're coming through to you.
Yeah, we have to talk.
All right. Okay. Good night. Good night. Bye.